are super fortunate today to be joined by somebody who I think is a true legend, Bret Hedican. So Bret is a two-time Olympian. He's a Stanley Cup champion, played 17 years in the NHL. He's been a broadcaster for 13 years. He's an entrepreneur. He started a company called Hedican that we're going to be talking about. He's married to Olympic gold medalist Kristi Yamaguchi. And we are very, very excited to have Bret. Bret, before we get to you, Kathy, get us started. Thank you, Mike Perlow, for the intro. Bret, what'd you think?
Oh man, I'm jacked up. That sound, that music, that looked like Sunday Night Football or wherever that was, Monday Night Football. I could feel it. The energy is definitely there. But yeah, man, I'm just humbled. Thank you for even including me with that incredible list of people that you've had on your show already. It's an honor really to be here.
No, we are fired up to have you. I love that picture of you with the beard. And you couldn't see it in the picture, but you're holding up the Stanley Cup, which that had to be an unbelievable moment for you. So my first question, I guess, is, so I think you were a 10th round draft pick, 198 overall. And I don't know, you had a phenomenal career at St. Cloud. 3 incredible years there. You're in their Hall of Fame. What did you think your career was going to be? Did you think it was going to be this 17-year, over 1,000 games played career, hoisting a Stanley Cup?
Man, no, absolutely not. And it's something that I think when I really go back in that journey, even to think of how I got to St. Cloud, it kind of came out of nowhere as a senior in high school, where I grew a lot in my junior summer, 7 inches to be exact. And so I was this kid that was pretty small, good athlete, good hockey player, but not really big enough to maybe make it to the college level and beyond. But then I grew, and I had this one university knock on my door, St. Cloud State. I think they offered 8 guys a full ride, and then they had an extra full ride for 2 other guys to split. And I was one of those guys that they offered me a partial scholarship, and I took it because they were the only ones knocking on my door. In my freshman year, I was in and out of the lineup a lot. And I think there's a lot of lessons to this, because sometimes we all have things that we're good at, and maybe we're not always in that right position to have that success that you're hoping for. And I played defense my whole career going into college, and all of a sudden they recruited me as a forward. Never played the position in my life. And so I was in and out of the lineup my freshman year. So when you asked that question, did I imagine a kid that was actually, the nights I wasn't playing on a Friday or Saturday night in the college lineup, I was up in the corner of the building hitting the play button on the music on the cassette player to play music on the intercom during the stoppages of play during the weekend series. So when you go from that scenario to where I ended up going, yeah, you never would have imagined it. But the one thing I do take a lot of pride in is, after the season, my freshman year, and didn't play that much, I walked in the coach's office and said, look, I played defense my whole life. I know I can help this team on defense. Give me a chance, give me that opportunity to come back next year as a defenseman, and I'll prove it to you. And that was kind of the beginning of the journey that led me to that career that you referenced.
Incredible. I heard a clip of you talking about culture, and this was with, I think, when you first joined Vancouver. Um, so I'm interested from St. Cloud, the Olympics, and then I think five different teams in the NHL. What was the best culture you ever played in, and what made it so special?
Well, the first time I felt that culture, that I really knew that culture was good before I even played on the hockey team. And I was in St. Louis. I was drafted by the Blues. You referenced the 10th round. I remember getting woke up in the morning in the middle of summer, my dad pulling me, at 9:30 as a kid. You're still growing. You're still sleeping in the morning. Hey, Bret, you were drafted by the Blues yesterday in the 10th round. I found out through my dad learning it in the paper. But when I finally got to St. Louis, and it really kind of was a tough environment, probably not the most supportive for me at that point in my career. And when I got traded, well, before I even got traded, I played against this Vancouver Canuck team. And they were a team at the end of the night. I remember looking at the roster, like, who are these guys? Like, I didn't recognize hardly anybody on that team, but I just remember us getting our butt kicked. And it was a tough, hard team that was just up and down the ice and played whistle to whistle and physical, but yet they had the skill level too. And I remember after that game saying, next time I play that team, I'm going to try to impress them. And so that next game, I had circled it on my calendar. They came into St. Louis, and I was ready for that game. I end up running over one of their toughest players in their lineup. Well, he gets, drops his glove, and fighting is something that happens once in a while in hockey. He ends up dropping the gloves with me, and I end up surviving this fight. And thankfully, I would still be laying there somewhere on the ice. But I ended up getting pulled into the office, months later, and got traded they said, hey, Bret, we made a trade. We're sending you to the Vancouver Canucks. And I couldn't believe it. Like, it was one of those moments that you think back in your career, like, how did this happen? How does the one team that I thought was a great team from the outside, and now I'm going there. And the first day I was in that locker room, I joined the Vancouver Canucks in Los Angeles to play the LA Kings. And as a 23, 24-year-old kid, still trying to find his way in the National Hockey League, confidence up and down, to say the least. I had fought through a knee injury, and I was really kind of trying to come back from that. But I remember that first period in that game making a mistake. And here you are trying to make a new team, feel good about a new team, an impression with a new team. And that mistake happens, costs our team a goal. And I go back into that locker room after the first period, and I'll never forget that moment. It was one guy after another coming by me in my stall, knowing what I was probably going through mentally at that moment, tapping me on my shin pad, said, Hedy, that's my nickname. Hedy, don't worry about it. We got you. We got your back. And then the next guy, and then the next guy, and then the next guy. And I just remember that feeling of, oh my, here I am, a new kid in a new environment and a new team, trying to make an impression. I make a mistake, and I got 5, 6, 7 guys picking me up. And that was the first time that I felt what culture, what making others better looks like. And I call it this mob mentality, making others better, that acronym. That's the first time I felt it from the inside, from the guts of a team, and what it feels like for when you have a bunch of people that are more interested in their teammates' success than their own, you can do amazing things. And that team, feeling it from the outside when I played against it, feeling it from the inside, from the LA Kings starting point to where it ended up that season, all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, where in round one, so to get to the Stanley Cup Finals, you got to go through 4 rounds of 7, best of 7 series. In the very first opening round, we were down 3-1 in the series. They had only one more win to win the series, and we were done for the season. We came back and won game 5, game 6, game 7 to catapult us into round 2. And we end up taking that really momentum and driving us all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals and losing against the New York Rangers in New York in Madison Square Garden in game 7. And I'm so thankful for that first journey of what a winning team and culture looks like. And I think from that moment on, it's what I was searching for over and over again. And I finally found it again in Carolina. So to answer your question, Scott, I think there's really not one answer. I think Vancouver taught me what MOB looked like. And then when I got to Carolina, I was able to take a lot of those experiences that I learned about what winning feels like, what it looks like from the inside, and being part of the solution to help create that environment in 2002. And then we went to another Stanley Cup in 2002. But I stayed there. I was an unrestricted free agent. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little long-winded here with this answer, but it's a big answer. That 2002 team, I could have went other places as an unrestricted free agent, and I decided to stay in Carolina because I felt like this team had the guts of MOB, and this idea of guys were more selfless, trying to help each other than themselves. And 4 years later, we end up winning the Stanley Cup. So I think I understood what that blueprint looked like from in here after that 94 trade and the Vancouver run. And I'm really just fortunate to be able to feel it a few more times of that winning environment.
I think one of the most challenging things in sports sometimes is to create a good culture when you have an Olympic team. And we've seen that happen, in men's basketball, where we may have the most talent, but not really a great culture. And ultimately, they don't wind up winning the gold medal. Your Olympic experience being on two Olympic teams, was that difficult to build a culture so quickly when you essentially have what amounts to an all-star team?
Well, I was fortunate enough to do the two Olympic teams that were completely different. My first Olympics was all amateur. We were not allowed to be professional in North America. So the Canadians and the Americans, we were all amateur kids. We were all college kids that left school. A lot of us were going to be seniors. For me, I was going to be a senior. There were some guys that were even going to be a sophomore or even a freshman in college. And when they made the national team, not knowing if you'd eventually make the Olympic team come February, we left school early on. So we didn't go that September back to school. We left to be the national team. We traveled around the world. And when you talk about kind of a tough environment, and one of the first times I'd ever felt that competitive feeling of even guys on your own team, we're all trying to go for the same positions on that Olympic team. We're all trying to shoot for this dream that I had when I was 10 years old. I mean, watching the 1980 Olympic team win the gold medal, sitting with my dad's crying as he's watching the Herb Brooks and the Americans win gold. And I remember saying, hey, I want to become an Olympian someday. So you set out on that journey as a 10-year-old, and then you get thrust into this national team where you got every guy in the same scenario wanting those positions for that role on the Olympic team, not knowing if you're even going to make the team. So come February, it was we were over in Germany, I think, and there was a sheet of paper, on the board basically saying, here's the team, here's the guys that are going back to New York, going home, and here are the guys that are going to France on the Olympic team. And I was on that sheet to go to the Olympics. So we did have some good moments through there, but it really felt like until that sheet of paper was hung on the wall where you knew that these were the guys going, did it actually feel like, okay, we can put all of that animosity or that feeling of, hey, we all want the same thing, but we were all the guys that were going. That's when I felt this kind of really pull together. And those tough moments we had all those months prior, it started to work for us. And we came in and we had a terrific Olympic Games, took fourth that year, shy of a medal. But man, I was so proud of us. Probably the best an Olympic team had finished since the 1980 Olympic team won gold. It was that 92 Olympic team that I was on. And we were all, again, amateur kids pulling the rope together. And then my second Olympics, it was different. You're right, Scott. It's a different environment. We were all professionals making the Olympic team. And that is very difficult to pull people together. And I think it takes good leadership at the top, a coach. It also takes some of the veteran, older guys on that Olympic team to pull a group together selflessly and try to be able to know that, this Olympics is much bigger than their own reputation. And so I didn't feel it as much as I needed to on that second Olympic team. I'm a little bit disappointed in how we played. If I could go back in time, I would have stepped into that role a lot more than I did. Even at 36, I was 35, 36 years old. But I'm glad I had both experiences. I'm glad I had a chance to represent our country, and I learned so much in both of those environments.
So when the Winter Olympics roll around and Christy is sitting there with her gold medal dangling it in front of you, is there smack talk going on in the Hedican house, or what happens?
Well, well, her gold medal is in Colorado Springs at the Figure Skating Hall of Fame. Thankfully, because it would be hanging much higher than my Stanley Cup. But I will say this: she did win the Dancing with the Stars mirror ball, and we do have that in our house. And I said, "There's no way that mirror ball is going above the my miniature Stanley Cup." I made sure that mirror ball is definitely below the Stanley Cup. But no, but she that gold medal is so. Our kids seen it for the first time when they were probably 12 and 10 in Colorado Springs, and they had their white gloves on as they were holding their mom's gold medal, and it was the first time I had seen it as well. So the Olympic dream, the Olympic ethos, the spirit of the world coming together as one. Boy, it gets me emotional thinking about it, because I think, that's what, what we all should strive for, is that ability that we all have a common ground. We all want to do great things, but we all can come together in this moment. So I love the Olympic spirit. And yeah, Christy felt the ultimate Olympic experience winning gold.
Yeah, unbelievable. Speaking of another all-time great, going back to that game that you referenced before where you made a mistake in Vancouver, and you guys are playing the Kings. That was the game that Wayne Gretzky, I think, broke the all-time scoring record. What made, in your mind, playing against Gretzky as a defenseman, what made him so incredible?
Well, it's a thing I call multitasking. And most people think of multitasking, be able to, talk on the phone, being able to do something else. Well, this is a much bigger multitasking. It's the brain, it's the spinal column and the nerves that travel to all the organs and the faculties in your body that allow you to do things in advance before other people can see what's going to happen. And being able to handle a puck, being able to survey the land, being able to see where all the players are on the ice is what Gretzky could do at the highest level. I call it, he's got the highest computer processor. So if you think about how computers work, and you get one that is an old computer and you're putting in the information and it's just slow, and you're like, man, can't this thing, spit out the number or spit out the answer for me? And then some computers, you get on it and you put it in and it just happens. With a guy like Wayne Gretzky, his ability to handle a puck and to be able to know things that were going to happen before they happen is what his computer processor was able to do. Connor McDavid is a current player, plays for the Edmonton Oilers now. He's really the closest thing I've seen to Gretzky, his ability to really know what's going to happen before it happens. And that's what makes those players so dynamic. It's what makes them so fun to watch, is because they can do things at such a high level.
Yeah, as outliers, we always believe that, anybody can be ordinary, but we all have the power to choose to be extraordinary. And yes, I think people like yourself, people like Christy, people like Gretzky have athletic gifts, but at some point you chose to be extraordinary. And that's what made you extraordinary, because there's always people that have those gifts that don't really reach those levels. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's just yourself and Christy and Gretzky are just way more athletically gifted than everybody else?
Absolutely. I believe that you can work on these things. And it's great that I just used that analogy about Wayne Gretzky, because I wasn't very good at multitasking for hockey. It's something that I had to go and work on. And handling the puck, skating at a high level were things that I really needed to improve upon. particularly as I started to progress through my career, I always really looked at my career, and every season you have to, and even for the people listening here, I think it's important to self-assess, to really give yourself some hard feedback to say, where are the things that I need to improve upon to make sure when I get that chance that next time that I'm going to be ready. And so multitasking, I ended up meeting a guy in Vancouver when I played there, and he created this treadmill, like a running treadmill, but it was a skating treadmill. And he took it, and because he's an exercise physiologist, he lowered it into the ground. So he dug a hole about 6 feet. And so this running platform, now skating platform, is parallel to the ground. And what he would do is he would get players, hockey players, and skate on the treadmill. And he would do at 33 degrees at 10 miles an hour. He would time you for 10 strides. And I'll get somewhere with this story, but because it's important, Scott. And I think that stride, as the first one comes forward without a puck, he would time you to do those 10 strides. And then he would do the same test with a puck. And the drop off he would see between without a puck and with a puck was the direct correlation of what you averaged points per game. Now, that's a really powerful thing to think about, and to know that if I can get my multitasking, my ability to handle a puck and skate at the same time, and my brain to be able to adapt to that at a higher level, it's only going to help my game. And I used to go there in the summer, and I would train on this treadmill to be able to help my brain to be able to do more things at the same time. And as I progressed throughout my career, I started getting better at it. And it all kind of culminates into one moment. And it was, I tell this to kids when I talk about any kind of motivational stuff. And I really usually start at this story because it's so important. It was Game 7, Stanley Cup Finals. It's a minute to go in the game. The Edmonton Oilers are down 2-1 against my Carolina Hurricanes. The goalie is pulled. It's 6-on-5. So they have 6 skaters. We have 5. The faceoff is in our zone. It's to the left of my goaltender, and I'm on the boards. I'm the left defenseman. Our captain, Rod Brindamore, is there to take the draw. Eric Stahl, Justin Williams, 2 other forwards, and then my defense partner, Mike Commodore. We lose the faceoff back to their right defenseman. He tries to get it down along the boards. It gets pinched off. It goes back to him. Now he tries to bank it off the glass by me in the corner. And in that moment, the biggest moment of my life, I knock it out of the air, multitasked. And I used to do this a lot after I started working on this skill with the guy from Vancouver. And as I knocked it out of the air in this Game 7 with a minute to go, I captured it. I gave it to Eric Stahl. He hit Justin Williams, who splits the defense and goes down and puts it into the empty net to ice the game 3-1. Now, I say that because when Rod Brindamore got the Stanley Cup from Gary Bettman, he passed it on to Glenn Wesley, who had played 20 years in the National Hockey League, never won a cup. And Glenn turns and he yells my name and gives it to me next. And I got that cup in that photo that you referenced at the beginning of it, the cup over my head. But the first thing that went into my brain, Scott, when that happened was, holy cow, I was right. I was right to not give up. I was right to keep trying to get better. I was right to keep looking at my weaknesses and attacking them. It wasn't like, holy cow, I just won the cup. It was like, that's the ingredients. The ingredients is continue to look at yourself and be able to apply new things that maybe you don't know. It's that humility of knowing that you don't have all the answers. And I think when you have the humility to know that you don't have all the answers, you keep searching. And it's okay to know that you're working towards something that can get you there. So to be an outlier is 100% what you mentioned. It's somebody that can continue to reach and strive to be different, to be, more of what they are currently, to be a better version of themselves by continuing to have that humility to try to get better at everything you do.
I love it. We have a ton of questions, but I've got one more for you. So 17 years in the NHL, 13 now and counting as a broadcaster, as a color analyst. Something Merrill Hodge told me once. So when he was on ESPN after his playing career with the Steelers and Bears was over, he said he used to prepare 40 hours for a 5-minute segment. how have you found your preparation to be? I mean, it's different what Merrill was doing and what you're doing. Um, your preparation as a hockey player on the ice versus as a color analyst, um, is it vastly different?
No, I've taken the same skills I learned in professional hockey on preparing to play as I've done in broadcasting. Any of you ever get a chance or want to see a hockey game and come on the radio, or at least put the headphones on when I'm doing my deal on the radio. A lot of times when I'm doing TV, you can't get in the TV booth there. But if I am doing radio and any of you want to come and experience that, just completely reach out to me. You'll be able to see the preparation that goes into every game. When you get ready for a hockey game, I always remember those winning teams that I played on and those winning cultures that you talked about earlier, Scott, is like when you're in that locker room and you're tying your skates and the music goes off in the locker room about the last 20, 25, 30 minutes before the game, and everything gets a little bit quiet and guys are tying their skates. And I just remember always looking across into that locker room and you're looking at guys that, that guy's ready. I know that guy over there is ready. Oh, I thank gosh I'm going into the war with that guy. And you kind of start to span that locker room. And I could say just the opposite for teams that I've been on that have been, losing environments, guys that haven't done the preparation, that aren't ready to go, that maybe didn't look after themselves the night before. So I always knew that preparation, on those winning teams, I want to be a part of any winning team, whether it be a broadcast team or a hockey team or, my business that I've done now is I'm creating that winning environment within what I do. You be ready. You sacrifice some nights. Maybe, you don't go out and have one extra glass of wine if that's what you like, or whatever you're doing, but you're ready that next day because you prepared. And I think you never want to let somebody down that you're on the team with. So I try to take the same ingredients that I learned in that locker room and apply it to broadcasting.
I love it. I love it. We are going to talk about his company, Hedican, because we have something special for you guys. So we may have to do that at the end. I'm going to open it up for Q&A. So right before this started, Dennis, who's been a phenomenal member of the Outlier Project, he said, "Hey, my son is really interested in being a broadcaster someday. Is it cool if he comes and hangs out?" And I said, absolutely. So our first question is coming from Michael. Michael, you are up with Bret.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Bret, for talking to us today. I appreciate it. I'm curious about what leadership skills you've learned since you've retired, particularly in the broadcasting world, that are different from the ones you learned while you were in the league from coaches.
I think leadership, thinking about that humility that I learned in hockey is one thing. I think character, for me, character means when you say you're going to do something, you follow through, is a great quality to have. I think the third thing would be that term I used earlier, is making others better. I think it's very difficult for people in the business world to understand sometimes that if I try to make my coworker better, they might get ahead of me and they might actually take the job that I'm looking for. But making others better and applying that sort of mentality that I learned in hockey and applying it now in business, what's going to end up happening is if you can overcome this idea of, if I make a coworker better, that they might get ahead of me, you have to be okay with that. And if you can stay true to it and continue to do that with the people around you, it's always going to come back to you. It will come back to you every time. And matter of fact, it's going to come back to you in spades, and you are going to flourish. You are going to be more reliable. More people are going to count on you because you are somebody that's making the people around them the best that they can be. It's selfless. So I don't know if I've learned anything different. I think what I have learned is try to take some of these characteristics that I learned in sports and apply it to the broadcast booth, apply it to the people around me, continue to try to go into those areas that I really truly believe what winning environments look like. and apply it into that world. So I don't know if I answered your full question there, but I think there's really no different ingredients between sports and business. I feel they're both the same.
Thank you.
And Bret, I'm just curious. So Michael, as a aspiring broadcaster, what's the best piece of advice you could give him as he's obviously early in his quest to take your job?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of kids will ask, Randy Hahn, who does the play-by-play on the Sharks. He's been doing it since almost day one. One of the best broadcasters, I think, in the National Hockey League. Dan Rusanowski, my other partner that I have, he's been doing every game as the San Jose Sharks on the radio. These guys get asked all the time, hey, how do I do, what you do? And they basically, to a man, will say, just get a job. Get a job finding it in the middle of Texas, in the smallest town you can possibly find, and start doing radio or start doing broadcasting for their local team. Work your way up from there. I think so many kids think that there's an easy path to the National Hockey League. Like just like that, they're going to be the guy, the prodigy that's going to get that job in the NHL. It's almost like going back to my hockey career. It didn't happen quickly. As a matter of fact, you're going to get punched in the nose a bunch and you're going to have to get up. But the main thing is just get out there and start doing it. I think that's sometimes a tough thing to get a job doing it. But if you start doing it anywhere, for the local, high school team, to maybe the minor league team, an East Coast team, or I'm using hockey terms or at least teams that, but you can apply that to any sport that you're really wanting to go in. But just start doing it.
Love it. Love it. All right. We are going to Randy in Florida. Mr. Ostrow, you're up with Bret.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, number one. Number two, my question, I guess, is, as someone who played some hockey as a kid, why do you think that ice hockey, professional ice hockey in general, doesn't get as much, let's say, credit as some of the other sports? Because I believe that ice hockey players are the best conditioned athletes compared to any professional sport. And if you haven't been on skates and played a game, I don't care if you're a professional basketball player, it's not the same thing. So I guess my question is, do you feel that way, or because you're in it, you don't really feel that?
I think when you look at the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, and then there's probably MLS and hockey, where we kind of are those guys that don't get the same credit as these other sports. But, I bump into people all the time that never had been to a live hockey game before. And if you've never been to a live hockey game, I really recommend you going and sit next to somebody that knows a little bit of the rules. I mean, there's not a lot of rules to hockey. I think people think it's very complicated. There's just really the blue lines on both, to go into either attacking zone, there's a blue line there. And the only thing that blue line means is that the puck has to cross that blue line before any of the attacking players, or they call it offside. And the other rule is just icing. If you throw the puck all the way down from behind the red line into the attacking zone and they get to the puck first, it's called icing. Other than that, I mean, there's little, tic-tac penalties and things like that. But when you see that and you understand just those simplistic rules, you can sit and watch the game, and then you can see the artistry behind handling the puck, the vision that it takes to be able to handle the puck and find the open man at the same time, the speed, the endurance. I mean, you look at and you talk about the conditioning. Our shift length, so the time that you're actually on the ice, is anywhere from like 45 seconds and to about 1:15. And sometimes it could be as little as 30 seconds to 1:15. Now, there are times you get stuck on the ice and you can't get off, and you're out there and your legs feel like a couple of lead weights. And it's very difficult because when you're on an 1/8 piece of steel, the only way you can move yourself up and down the ice is if you thrust yourself. It's a very difficult thing to do, and it takes a lot of conditioning to do it. So I agree with you. I think we are one of the top conditioned athletes in professional sports. I think over time, I feel like our sport is starting to go this way because our skill level is going up. I think the fighting has come down. I think people don't like that fighting aspect of our sport. Do I think it'll ever leave the sport? In some ways, I can hard for me to say this. I hope it doesn't. I think nobody's really gotten hurt that much typically when they get in a scrap, but we do have a way of policing ourselves in our sport. There's not a lot of trash talking out there. And if there is, you better back it up. And I've seen all through my years, I don't care how tough you think you are, you're going to run into that day where you're not as tough as you think. And I think it's a metaphor to life, right? Don't always go into every situation thinking you know all the answers. And I think that's kind of what one of the beauty of our sports is. So I appreciate you saying that about hockey. And I hope, if you've never seen a game on this call, have a chance to go out and watch a hockey game, go for it.
Nothing better than live hockey, that is for sure. Paul, we're staying in Florida. Paul, you're up.
Oh man, Bret, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I love your acronym of MOB. My question is, I feel like for me, I've grown up watching sports my entire life, and I can say that in terms of like a willpower and a mentality perspective, I've seen hockey players play through things like, punctured lungs and just insane injuries. I'm curious for you, is it the culture that does that, or is there any type of strategies or tips that you could share that you guys do to really build that resilience, if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, there's lots of injuries I've had. As a matter of fact, that time I raised the cup, I had played through a torn ligament in my thumb. I did that in game 3 in the finals. And then in game 1, I got 2 guys that kind of hit me from behind. I tore my labrum in my hip. And so I was playing, 5 to 4 games on some significant injuries that both of them needed surgical repair after the Stanley Cup finals. And how I kept playing through it, I don't really know. Sometimes I look back and kind of think, wow, how did I do that? And I remember after we win the cup, we're inside the locker room, and Rod Brindamore, our captain, he's got champagne in the cup, and I go over and I drink from it from the first time from Roddy, one of my best buddies to this day. I love him. We've been through so much together, and we believed in one another. We raised each other up when we needed it. So I was no better guy to be drinking from the Stanley Cup the first time than with Rod Brindamore, who now coaches the Carolina Hurricanes. But after I drank from the cup, I remember crawling over to my stall where I was, and it was a full locker room. You couldn't get anybody in there. And I went down on my hands and knees, and I puked right there in front of my stall. I had nothing left. I completely had given everything I had in me during that, 4 rounds of 7 games in the Stanley Cup finals, on the ice to close the game, but we get it done. And yeah, puked everything I had in me. And it was like, I think all of that, what you realize is that you're pulling for the guys beside you, and you'll do anything for them. It's not war. Okay. Let me take it. It's not war, but you are in a foxhole with these people, and you don't want to let them down. And I think that's kind of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it won't matter. That's what we always say in martial arts and Kung Fu, that I do a little bit now over the last 5 years. But that's kind of where you get to that level where you're thinking about others more than yourself, which allows you to drive a lot further through things than you could ever imagine.
Love it. Love it. Ellie in Michigan, you're up.
Hi, Elle Ingalls here. Hi, Bret. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. I'm a performance coach. I've worked with some hockey players, young hockey players, and, going straight from high school into St. Cloud, now we've got juniors going on. And I wondered if you could just share, because I know Tag works with athletes too. Some of the juniors I've worked with, one went to Ferris, one went to MSU, but then I see boys fall through the cracks because they have to leave home, and they're in strange cities, and they get traded all around, and there's so much that they aren't really prepared for. So I wonder if you could just share a bit about your perspective of, rather than going straight from high school into college, they've got these juniors now.
I think with the right help with these kids that have that intermediary of high school before they get the chance to go and be a 20-year-old freshman in college, which I think is really great in some respect, because I think at 18, when I graduated high school, at 17, 18, and then I go to as a freshman in college, I probably mentally, physically, I wasn't really ready to take that next step. So having a year or two in junior would have been great. Now, in those intermediary years, I think for somebody like you that can help coach these kids and understand, there's three things that I ended up learning about who I was as a player. And this could be applied to business as well. We call it our ABCs. And if you ever to ask you these athletes or even people on this call, you know, if you were to close your eyes and say, hey, what does it look like when you play your best or you're at your best in your work? You can close your eyes. You can see yourself in those moments of what you look like when you're at your best. And what these kids could understand about that, those years in between high school and potentially college, and the reps that they could start to begin to understand and do for themselves, is get a really clear idea of what is it, those three things that make you unique and great at what you do. Write them down, write them out clearly so you can see them on paper. And every time over those next couple of years, as you're going through that transition of getting ready to be a college athlete, you start to, every time you have self-doubt, you pull out that piece of paper and you read it. These are the three things that I do great when I'm at my best. And over time, over the course of these repetitions that you'll do, is you'll start to, you won't need that piece of paper after some time. It becomes very clear about who you are as a player and as a person. And when you walk in that locker room, you're going to have a lot more confidence in yourself. You're not going to try to be somebody you're not. You're going to lean into those three things that you are. And that's something I had to learn through repetition and continual repetition over years. You can't just think that these mental reps, it's like going into the weight room for the very first day and your new trainer that you're paying $200 an hour for says, here, I'm going to put 225 pounds on the bench press. That's 245 plumb plates on the side. And I want you to do a one rep max. Guess what's going to happen to that bar as you pull it off? It's going to collapse on you. But if you start to go to the gym every day for the next year, do you think you could lift that weight? No. How about year 2? No. Year 3, year 4, year 5, probably year 7 or 8, you might be able to finally lift that bar off the rack and pull it down and start to move it forward. So I think mental reps, what we don't understand a lot of times, and what I had to learn in pro sports, is that mental reps are almost, well, they're equal. They're 1-to-1. If you do a physical rep, you got to think about the mental rep is equal to it. And over time, you start to get stronger and stronger. So great that you're working with young athletes. Help them understand what they look like when they're at their best. Have them write down their top things that they're great at and physically write it out on a piece of paper where they can pull it out of their pocket and remind themselves when they have that self-doubt, when they have a tough game, when they have a good game. I think that's important, is the good and the bad, right? These two things eventually should cancel each other out because neither one of them are going to help you. The only thing that's left when you have a good, something positive or something negative that happens, it's you. You're in the middle of that with your ABCs, the three things that who you stand for. And when you can rely on that and do enough repetitions long-term, you become somebody that I say it becomes untouchable.
Nice. Thank you. I love that assessment too, along with the MOB. And I got 3 things going: humility, MOB, assessment. It's been great. Thanks, Bret.
You're welcome.
Fantastic answer. Mr. Garber, 2 T's. Scott, 2 T's.
Let's go, Bret, my man. It is great to see you and have you in the community. Sort of 2-part question here. One's going to be hockey side. As a hockey fan, I'm curious, what was your favorite arena to play in throughout your tenure? And then on the second side of it, you guys there? Sorry, I had a bunch of calls just come in. Second side of the question, man, I'm genuinely curious. How did you meet Scott McGregor? Like, how did you end up on the screen here today?
Yeah, great questions. First answer, Montreal is my favorite building I played in. It was the first ice I ever stepped on in the National Hockey League. When I signed my St. Louis Blues contract, I joined the St. Louis Blues. They were in Montreal to play the Canadiens. The first ice I stepped on was the old Montreal Forum. And there's just something about that building that they replicated in their new building. I think it's one of the best hockey arenas in the world. It just, the fans are just right up on top of you. 20,000 people are there every night. I had some of the biggest games of my career in there to go to this, win series. I don't know. It felt so good to be in that building and the history behind all the Stanley Cups that were there. And to get to your second question with Scott McGregor, and Scott, maybe you can add to this, but he reached out to me via LinkedIn and told me a little bit about himself. That told me a little bit how he found me through my backpack company, and we just, sometimes you just people are the right kind of people, the people you want to connect with. And I think when Scott, said a few things within his note, I resonated with it. And that's kind of sometimes being curious, also trying to go after, and try to think about, what this guy's all about, and then researching a little bit and seeing some of the things and the impact that he's having. And I think like minds try to find each other, and people that are trying to make others better. And I love the whole message here with the Outlier Project and what you guys all stand for.
Yeah, I knew.
Beauty, brother. Look forward to connecting.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bret was my kind of guy instantly. I knew he was an outlier for sure. And we're going to talk about Hedican in a moment. John, our good professor, so professor at BC and Harvard, not bad hockey at both. So I don't know what question we've got, but John, you're up.
Great. Bret, thank you. This is fascinating. And my first experience, Scott, with the Zoom thing. So it's great. Really respect everything you're doing. I grew up with Eric Hayden and Mark Johnson and other folks that I know you've probably come across. So my question is about diversity and how do you look at it, given, you look at the numbers and how is the hockey world made up in terms of just ethnicity in, compared to the world. So for yourself, how do you look at it? And then how do you look at it for the NHL?
Diversity is really what we're trying to build in the world of hockey. I think we aren't diverse enough yet here in our sport. What I think I can lean a little bit on that question is, so Christy's foundation, my wife's foundation, is called Always Dream. And I've been a board member for about, almost 20 years. And what we support is early childhood literacy, and we give access to books on a digital tablet to communities that I feel are underserved. And we provide that tablet, and we have a book coach that is kind of in between the family and the child, the young reader, and the school. And we help these students find that love of reading by educating the parent that it just takes a few minutes a day to sit down with their child to integrate this love of reading. And I feel there's a skyscraper leaning in San Francisco, and it's Millennium Tower, it's called. And the company that built that skyscraper have built, 1,200 skyscrapers around the world. They've used the same foundation in every one of those skyscrapers that they've built. But the one in San Francisco is leaning, and why? It's leaning because that foundation is not rooted in bedrock. And so I look at education and reading as the bedrock to all of life, of fulfilling kids' dreams, to giving them an opportunity. So how does that relate to your question? I would say is by giving more people an opportunity at education, by giving more people an opportunity to grow as a community, you're going to have more diversity within all of sports, all different types of sports. I think we can continue to build that as a league, as an NHL, that we can go into underserved areas that are going to be more diverse and give more kids an opportunity. I think just giving kids an opportunity in education with reading and access to high quality books and being able to interject there with our book coaches that help the families and the schools bridge that community gap. We can do the same thing in hockey, where we give kids opportunity and allow our sport to become more diverse.
Love it. All right, our cleanup hitter, and then we're talking about Hedican. The good Colonel, Scott Heathman, you're up.
Thank you, Bret. It's wonderful to have you here, and thank you for spelling your name with one T. We need to stand strong against the waste of consonants. But I appreciate it. I'll keep this one simple. It's easy to assume that young athletes, their dream is to hit the highest pinnacle, in their sport, raise a cup, whatever it may be, a championship. What does success look like, Bret, to Bret today, now that you've had that success in sport?
Success to me, I've just tried to keep those tools, and I don't want to keep going over them, but I feel this making others better. I feel continuing just to have that humility about the way I go about my life and trying to continue to look at myself and ways of improving. Not to where you're driving yourself crazy, but I think to the point where I think there's a lot of interesting things in life that you can continue to learn about. I started this business, and Scott, we can get into it in a bit, but really under this whole thing of, I think we all have moments in our life that have changed us. I think if anybody on this call, if I were to ask you, really going back to the ABCs and closing your eyes and what it looks like to be great, I bet you could close your eyes as well and think about some people that came into your life or moments you had in your career that something shifted, something changed in who you are and the way you go about life because of that one moment. And I can go back to some of these things that happened in my life and what my business kind of stands for with my backpacks and the patches that go on it. But I think I just want to continue on that same journey of what I learned about successful teams and successful people. I mean, there's a reason why you guys are outliers. If you guys have done a lot of these things, this is probably normal stuff. But for a lot of people, I think what we talk about is challenging sometimes for people. And I think if we can lend some of these perspectives to people and to support them in believing in some of these things will actually turn out the way you want them to, if you continue to believe in yourself, continue to kind of doubling down and trying to improve in little areas that maybe you're weak in. And know that there are going to be moments in your life that are going to be catalysts, or going to be moments that you didn't really realize how big of an opportunity it was until you went, wow, this is one of those moments. I got to capture it. I can't let it go. And so I don't know, Scott, with 1T, if I answered that question for you, but I think ultimately I don't like to change too much in where I'm headed. I think I'm really leaning in the things that I learned through professional sports.
No, you did. Thank you.
All right, let's talk Hedican. So we have a special announcement for you guys. So Bret and I have formed a partnership between Hedican and the Outlier Project to provide his unbelievable product. And when I say unbelievable, it is the best backpack I've ever seen in my life at a discount for the Outlier Project. So I'm going to show you mine, and then I'm going to have Bret talk about it. So this is my Hedipack. These are all Velcro patches that I can stick literally anywhere on this baby. Bret, tell us a little bit about the blanket and how that translated into what is now this burgeoning business of yours.
Yeah, so the blanket is actually it's right over there on that couch right there. As you can see, it's the checkered one. That was a blanket it's all full of patches. And those patches really originally came off my jacket when I was a kid, of all the tournaments that I played in and championships I may have won and different teams that I played on. And when you grow and you grow out of the jacket, my mom took those patches off of the jacket and sewed them onto this blanket. Well, I kind of really loved that idea because every time I saw that blanket, it reminded me of these cool moments that I had early in my life. And I ended up building a backpack for a bunch of my buddies that I go fishing with. There's 8 of us, and I built these tactical backpacks, and I put their name on it. I put Velcro all over them. Brought them to a guy downtown St. Paul, and he sewed Velcro where I asked him. And then I started collecting patches that were individual for each guy. Their university, things that resonated with me, that resonated with this particular friend. If they ever caught a 40-inch muskie, I got a patch for that. Ontario patch, a Canadian American patch. Yeah, and now you can see we've added these miniature country flags. So I know there's a lot of people from around the world that are an outlier. So I'm hoping I have all of these countries recognizing all of you here and beyond for your outliers. But every year I would collect a few patches, and at dinner, I would hand these patches out to specific guys for catching the biggest fish or whatever they may have done. And over the course of the last 8 years, every one of these bags really told a story of each guy. And when I took a photo of these backpacks sitting there next to the float plane that takes us to where we fly in and fish for 5 days and they pick us up, it was like, man, there's something there. There's something to these backpacks that tell a story for each guy and about these things that we've had in our life that have changed us. I mean, my backpack, I've given a lot of my patches away, but some of these for me, this is that 94 Stanley Cup team. I keep this on me at all times. This is the one that really changed me, right? This is where I recognize what teamwork and that mob mentality. These are I do some martial arts now with Kung Fu, and these are my two for here. Working with a foundation where we gave 125 so far, and we give another 125 backpacks to kids in these underserved communities. And this is the Lisa Maribel Foundation. And then I started adding some of my mini patches on here, my mini flags. This is St. Cloud State, where I went to school, and my name. And I've got the Sharks, where I work with some companies over in Hawaii. Malibu Shirts, love that they do all their patches. And then I got some more here on this side. This is the one I built for my fishing group. And it's the 50-inch muskie patch. If you ever catch a 50-inch muskie, at dinner that night, I gave all 50 of these patches to my best buddy, Greg, where we go to his place. And he's the only guy I said that can hand this patch out. So one night I caught the 50-inch muskie, and at dinner, then he handed me this patch that I created for him, but only could get it back once I caught the fish. So anyway, that's kind of a nutshell what my business is. It's I try to do high quality backpacks, the patches, and you can put them on there, have your own story. If you have a patch at home, we have Velcro that you can put on the back of it. It's like adhesive strength. So we leave no patch behind.
So everybody, when they sign up, they get an outlier patch, the Outlier Project patch. They also get a People Over Everything patch. So all you have to do is add the Velcro to that. You can buy patches directly from Hedican. And I believe, Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe our code is Outlier20, and you get 20% off. And when you're walking through an airport, hopefully you'll see other outliers with patches on their packs. You'll definitely see me walking around New York City and all over the place with mine. But Bret, man, you really have created something very, very cool, and we appreciate the partnership.
Scott, I'm really cool to send that backpack to you, and I'm really glad you love the quality and you love the product, and most importantly, it really stands for what you guys are doing. I think, when you guys go on some of these expeditions and these things that you're changing people's lives and you're really making a difference, there should be a patch for that. There should be a memory for that, and things that you can carry with you that, probably change your life for the better and for all the days you move forward.
Yep. So we've got lots of cool stuff coming up, lots of retreats, expeditions, meetups, all kinds of stuff. So lots of patches coming. And so definitely, we've got hundreds and hundreds of members that are not on this call, but that will see the replay, but will get the newsletter that announces the partnership and the very generous discount that you've given us. So Bret, man, this has been an unbelievable hour. I mean, so many gold nuggets and so much wisdom. I cannot thank you enough.
Man, thanks, Scott. And thanks to your community and the Outliers. I'm proud to be a part of it. I'm humbled. And I hope there was a couple, like you say, nuggets in there that can, make somebody better on this call that I learned, that I went through, the journey that I had the privilege to be a part of.
Awesome. Absolutely love it. Listen, everybody, have a phenomenal day. Bret, thanks for joining us. Thanks for showing us the eagle on the mantle. That was very, very cool. For those of you who missed, it's how much does it weigh?
It's at least 140, 150 pounds. It's
150 pounds, and it's holding the Olympic rings, which is pretty cool. Very cool.
Well,
thanks again, Bret.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
All right, guys. Anyone who
Standing
wants to stay on
ovation,
for-
standing ovation.
Yeah,
Wow.
right.
That's a standing ovation right there.
Wow.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. Really. Thanks, John. Really appreciate you guys. Yeah. Thanks for having me a part of this today.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it.
you.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
See you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. Get your backpacks. You will love them. I am definitely not just saying that. The quality is off the charts. And the patches are very cool. I'm a collector of like memories and stuff like that. So if I go to a special place, so they have a ton of patches on the website, which is hedygear.com. But we also will be incorporating our own patches with our words like impact and our sayings like anyone can be ordinary. But we've got lots and lots of patches coming out that you guys can put on your backpacks. And I appreciate you guys joining us today. Awesome. John, thanks for being on for the first time. It was great.
That's
And thanks for the
fantastic. Thank you,
question.
Scott. Yeah, thanks, Scott. And let's connect at some point because I'd love to brainstorm for that last email.
100%. Absolutely.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Take care.